And that is the practice of visualizing yourself as a 5-year-old person. In order for you to see that as a 5-year-old child, you are very vulnerable. You can be hurt very easily by anyone at any moment. A stern look from your father can wound you. A shout from your mother can hurt you deeply. And when father and mother are having a fight, well, you got all the suffering into your store consciousness. We have to know that even we are born, our store consciousness already began to receive wounds from our mother and father. Everything she eat, everything she drink, everything she worry about, every suffering that she has in herself penetrate in our store consciousness. So she, who is an expecting mother, should know that in order to practice mindfulness of eating and of taking care of her emotions for herself, for her baby. And her husband has to practice mindfulness also in order not to brutalize her, not to say things, not to do things in order to hurt her store consciousness, and at the same time the store consciousness of his child. So that is the practice of mindfulness in the context of the family, thought to be for the sake of the child, but it is really for the sake of the whole family. How could a mother not practice mindfulness if she cares about the well-being of her child? She has to eat properly, drink properly, to live her emotional life in such a way that it will not hurt the baby inside her. And the father has to be aware of that and help his wife doing so for the protection of his baby. When the child is born, although the baby does not know the language of adults, but a fight between father and mother, a hurting statement made by either the father and mother, the child receive it. Because the vibration in the speech can go directly to the child. We continue to plant and to sow seeds of suffering in the store consciousness of our baby. We think that the baby is too small, how could he understand? But that's not true. The heavy atmosphere in the family continue to water the seed of unhappiness in a child. In Buddhism, store consciousness is very often compared to a piece of fertile soil, the land of the mind field. And as parents, we are responsible for the planting of earlier seeds within that fertile field. Very important. And you know that if you are not mindful, and then you can make your child unhappy by continuously sowing this kind of seed in him. From time to time, the little boy, in order to avoid suffering, run into the toilet room and lock himself in there. It is a tragedy, but his parents do not notice it. And he suffers silently, very deeply inside the toilet room. And with that kind of heritage, he grew up as an unhappy person, and the young lady he married will have to suffer. And the children that they bore will continue to suffer because the young boy now has become adult and does not know how to transform the seeds of suffering in his store consciousness, naturally make his children suffer, his wife suffer. That is the will of samsara. So I propose that those who are about to get married should engage in half a year of practice in order to transform their internal formations here first before they get married. That's for their sake and the sake of their children. 1 year may be good. In countries like Thailand, Cambodia, all young men are expected to practice something like a year in the monastery. Maybe in America you can do that. And that would be a requirement for those who want to marry, to get married. 1 year of practice in order to transform the seed of suffering transmitted by parents. Otherwise, you will perpetuate the cycle of suffering on and on. So when a young man practices looking at himself as a 5-year-old child and smile to that vulnerable, fragile 5-year-old child, suddenly some understanding is born. Because of that vulnerability, fragility, he gets hurt so easily. So the smile directed to him is a smile of compassion. I am having compassion vis-a-vis myself as a 5-year-old child. Poor me, I was helpless. I did not know how to deal with that. When seeds of suffering are sown and watered in myself. After that, the young man was offered another meditation. Breathing in, I see my father as a 5-year-old child. Breathing out, I smile to that 5-year-old child that was my father. It may be the first time he can visualize his father as a 5-year-old child. Before that, the father was only a very grim, difficult person. The moment when you can see your father as a 5-year-old child, you get an insight. You may need the family album, you may need imagination, but you have to visualize your father as a 5-year-old child. And when you are capable of seeing him like that, you see that there's no difference between him, 5-year-old, and you, 5-year-old. Also very, very vulnerable. Very, very fragile. And easily getting hurt. If you grow up like that, you cannot help but making other people suffer. So the young man sees his father as a 5-year-old child, and some insight is born. He smiles to that 5-year-old child with compassion. And this is the first wave of blood he sent into his painful zone. But not enough. He has to do it again and again. Breathing in, breathing out, in order to bring the blood of mindfulness into the zone of pain and to encompass the father. Poor daddy, he was like me. He suffered so during his childhood. He is worth my compassion. He needs my compassion rather than my anger. That is the equivalent of looking deeply, doing the work of massaging. That is the job of vipassana meditation, insight. And how can you do that if you do not have some amount of calm, of stability, of stillness, of freedom? If you are not free, and then how can you have the time and the energy to do it? Get free from your worries, from your being busy, from your boredom, from your forgetfulness. Become free, and you have the energy and the time in order to practice looking deeply.
mí mắt chân trời mỏi.
This concludes part 1 of The Art of Mindful Living with Thich Nhat Hanh. We continue with part 2.
Đêm về thơm giấc cỏ